Hey, what is up, everyone? So today we are going over the announcement of what Season 18 is going to be. So this video I kind of had to push off a little bit just because I wasn't expecting them to release this information so soon. So I wanted to wait till after my concepts for Season 18 released, which released this past Saturday. So go check those out if you want to see how my, wants and desires line up with this. And I'll try to mention that as we go through. Now, I have skimmed through this a bit, so I have seen some of what we're going to be talking about here, but I haven't really gone in depth because they usually do like a little bit of like a brief announcement of what it is, and then they go in depth towards the end of it. So I haven't gone in depth with these. So I'm curious to see what actually is going on with Season 18. Already, I have a feeling it's going to be better than Season 17 just because Season 17 is a very low bar to beat, and it's honestly, Season 17 is probably our worst season, maybe slightly above Season 9, but I don't know, it's very tough to say, honestly. But let's go ahead and get into this. So Season 18 is going to be following the same 3-act structure that Season 17 started with, so it's going to have like the main content of the season added in the first month, then the second month's going to be a limited time event, and then the third month's going to be basically taking something that already exists in the game and then updating it. However, when I did look over this earlier, it didn't really seem like I was taking something that already exists. It seemed like it was something genuinely new, so that's the thing I'm actually mostly interested in. But let's go ahead and get started. So, from what they announced during the preview event, the idea was that this was mostly going to be taking over and being like an update for the Devil's Roar. Now, as I've read through this a little bit, and we're going to get into this a little bit more, it seems like it's a little bit less Devil's Roar and more so like an... They call it Dark Ancients, but I think they actually mentioned it somewhere that it's actually going to be called, I saw it somewhere, I think, the Banished Ancients. So that's the actual name. You're going to see Dark Ancients throughout this whole post, but Dark Ancients is just the dev name, as Mike has said here, and it's actually going to be Banished Ancients. So let's talk about what's going on with these. So the Banished Ancients for Act 1, we're going to be searching large islands for the unearthed sarcophagus of the Dark Ancient Eternal Guard, the Banished Ancients, a new enemy type that has been found its way back into the Sea of Thieves. You must perform the ritual to summon an Eternal Guard from its slumber, where you must then battle it and defeat it with one purpose in mind, to retrieve a Dark Ancient's Sanctuary Key. So I'm going to go ahead and stop right here because we've talked so much about Sea of Thieves reusing content in the game, and here's the problem. A lot of people that will read this at first glance will be like, oh, this sounds brand new, completely brand new. Really what I see when I'm looking at this is it's pulling a few different things together to make something new. So what we have here is basically, it's very similar to what we had with the Reaper Voyages in Season 16, which is pretty recently in terms of we are basically getting their sarcophagus, we're, doing like this whole ritual thing with it, and then you're kind of bringing in the idea of like a skeleton lord or something like that, where you have like this enemy that you fight that drops a key that opens up some kind of vault. Now, let's get a little bit into this and see what this key will actually grant, which will actually grant the access to one of the 3 newly excavated Dark Ancient sanctuaries in the Devil's Roar. These buried structures have been found by the Smugglers League's mysterious client on 3 separate islands in the region. Curious to see how spread out they are. I'm assuming they're going to be with the bigger islands in the Devil's Roar, but we'll see about that. Using the League's powerful black powder explosives to delve into the tough ground and find the once lost and buried buildings inside the subterranean structures, you will discover the secrets of the Dark Ancients, brand new Dark Ancient treasures, items, and other existing treasures of the Roar. So, 2 things here. First, I do like that they're actually seemingly putting in a lot more lore into the game. I feel like lore was kind of absent from a lot of what we've been seeing from updates in the game. Like, what is really the lore reason why we suddenly have ancient megalodons? No one really knows because there really isn't no explanation for it. But now, I think starting with Season 16, but now including like the introduction of the Smugglers League, we're starting to see that like being continued. The Smugglers League is not just going to go away after Season 17, it's going to be built upon. So I am happy about that in a sense. I do feel like the Smugglers League was a bit of a, rough start. It wasn't really introduced the way that I think it should have been introduced. I've made a lot of videos, but I'm pretty sure I talked about a video what I think would have been better for the Smugglers League. If I do have that, I'll link that. But I am happy that we're going to keep developing it because I feel like that's sometimes the problem with Sea of Thieves, at least in the past, where they'll introduce interesting ideas or concepts, such as, like, Flameheart's return, which Flameheart did eventually return, like a year or so later with Season 13, but then it hasn't really felt that impactful since then. And that's, like, one that they actually kept going with. But then we have other stuff, like what happened with the one girl from Ancient Spire Outpost that was like the tavern keeper, where her arm was starting to get all like the skeleton curse, and you had the whole thing with Briggsy. We never really got any follow up with that. We were supposed to have like this whole thing with the Skull Siren song. Like, what was that Skull Siren song actually for? What was Briggsy doing? And we never got any payoff with that. So at least it seems like now they're actually taking a focus on like the newer stuff they're adding in and just like kind of building out a new storyline. So at least that's something. I think we'll have to see if that pays off as we continue going forward. So I'll give that a positive. At least from here, it seems like the lore aspects, there's like something building up in terms of a new storyline. And I think there's a lot of people that either somewhat are into the storyline or very into the storyline. I'm more on like the somewhat. I think storylines are really good to help keep you engaged in the game and can really help add a little bit of extra interest to like the developments of the world and everything that's going on. But so far, I haven't really been that interested in Sea of Thieves storyline. I feel like it could definitely improve, but I'm very interested to see what they do with all of this going on in the future. And the other thing I was gonna say is there was an idea that I kind of talked about in the concept video that I released on Saturday about basically having these like kind of like dungeons, volcanic dungeons, where you're like going down below into like these volcanic islands, and there'd be like rooms that you'd fight in and that kind of stuff. And you can go watch that if you want to get more in detail about what my thoughts on that would be. But this kind of sounds a little bit similar with these dark ancient sanctuaries, where we're kind of going down below into these buried structures, and we'll have to go further into the details to see what we're actually doing there. So that's all we have for the first part of this new season. Now, just on this on the own here, that doesn't sound like a lot to me, if we're being honest, but we might get a lot more once we get into more of the details. I think there's going to be more that we can cover. This is mainly just meant to be a summary and a kind of like a too long didn't read section for people. Now we're going to get into the second month. So all of this here is basically going to be limited time. So I don't really put too much interest in this. Like, it's similar to what we currently have right now. We have the new heist event that's going on in Season 17 with the Smugglers League and the Royal Crest Fortress. And it's cool. I actually did like the event. I don't think it's going to have that long-lasting effect. And based off, the poll that I did on the channel, I think last time I checked it was like at 50-50 between people that are interested in it and people that have no interest in it. And I do kind of feel like this is going to have the same problem. So I think eventually they're probably going to go back on this season model. I feel like we'll probably do the season model for maybe a year, and then they'll kind of realize that people aren't liking this limited time stuff that's going on. So let's go ahead and just talk about what they have here. For the duration of Act 2, so it's about 1 month, each of the trading companies is trying to get their hands on newly discovered dark orbs. Anyone who can reach grade 5 emissary for them will be offered an emissary quest to collect one of these orbs for them. Real quick though, I really do like this aspect of it, because one thing that I think people have had a problem with Sea of Thieves lately is just that so many people, are so against PvP at this point that everyone just is trying to avoid it at all costs. So you're not really seeing too much like loot on people's ships. A lot of ships are very like scarce, so even if you do sink someone, the best you're getting is maybe like a couple of chests or something like that. It's gotten a little bit better with Season 17 because there's so much smuggler loot that's like available across the whole world, so more people are having loot on their ship. But I think having people get to a grade 5 emissary and getting the emissary quest and using that kind of system to be able to push forward this limited time event is actually a good idea. So I am kind of interested in this, and I do like having the emissary quest have a bigger role. I am curious if the current emissaries that don't have an emissary quest, like the Guild emissary and the Reaper emissaries, if they will be included in this. I'm assuming the Reaper emissary probably not, but the Sovereign with the Guild Emissary might be able to get one. I would be interested to see that once we get able to test this stuff. So this has stemmed from the excavation work completed in the Devil's Roar. Flameheart has observed this work and completed some of his own excavations at Molten Sands, and that's the skeleton fort for anyone that doesn't recognize that name, uncovering ancient structures inside a new vault area where the orb can be found. However, access requires a key, and acquiring the key is no simple task. To this point, acquiring the orb is not as simple as just using the key either. Each of the trading companies has information regarding the location of an on-demand Eternal Guard sarcophagus, which is the previous month's addition here. They will only share it with their most trusted pirates, so as mentioned, you'll need to reach Grade 5 Emissary to embark on this special Emissary quest. I am curious if they'll replace the current Emissary quest, or if you'll be able to get both. That would be kind of interesting. I have a feeling it's probably going to replace it just for the month. That might annoy some people, but I don't know, I think it's okay. The Eternal Guard you hunt down in this voyage, however, are holding a different key. It does not unlock a sanctuary door, but instead can be placed on an uncovered ancient plinth at Molten Sands Fort. Use the key to activate the plinth and thus the fort event, where you must defeat waves of enemies differing from that of a standard skeleton fort event, including dark ancient skellies and an Ashen Lord, all whilst navigating the dangerous terrain and hazards generated by island's volcanic structure. Be victorious in a battle and earn access to the coveted prize, the Dark Orb, along with an array of other high-value loot. To be clear, yes, this is a world event that you'll be activating yourself, much like the Fort of the Dam, so be warned, other players are going to be swarming to the fight with you alongside the enemies, so keep an eye out and be on the lookout and ready to battle at each other at all times. This one, I think, while I don't like that it's a limited time event, I kind of get why it's a limited time event. This was actually something that I talked about in the concept video, where I basically wanted them to do something with Molten Sands Fortress, because I felt like that's just been sitting there this whole time. And I didn't want it to just be like a normal skeleton fort or like a Fort of Fortune. I wanted them to do something unique with it. The problem with on-demand events is that if you can do it anytime, it loses its value for being there. So for example, it used to be really important back in the day for the Fort of the Dam. For the Fort of the Dam, you used to have to do all the different things to get those lanterns. You used to have to die by fire, you used to have to die by player interaction, die by poison, all of that different stuff to be able to get all the lanterns to light and activate the Fort of the Dam. They eventually made it easier with, I think it's called the Scroll of Destiny. It's been a while, I don't really remember it too well. But they introduced that as a way to basically bypass all that and make it a lot easier for people to start the Fort of the Dam. But the problem with that is you'll now sometimes see with the Fort of the Dam that when you go up there, and sometimes people aren't even doing it because it's so easy to activate now that people can just go activate it and then just dip out, or maybe they're just waiting there for someone else to come and try to do it. Whatever the case may be, it's lost a little bit of its meaning. So what you really want with these world events that are player activated, you want somewhat of a higher bar in terms of being able to start the world event in order to make it, more compelling. Because if you see it active, you want everyone else in the server to basically want to go after it. It used to be that way with other stuff, like the Fort of Fortune is probably the only other one that I would say is a little bit similar to that, where because of it being more rare, when it has the Chest of Fortune, it's usually a little bit more coveted. But you might see stuff like the skeleton forts and stuff that, since they're on demand, you can do them whenever. There's no barrier to entry with that. People just don't really care about them anymore. And you can do them oftentimes without ever being interrupted because, it's just so common to see and it's just so easy to access. So I do really like the idea that in order to unlock this, it's by reaching grade 5 for an emissary, and it can be any emissary from what it seems like. I'm assuming the Reapers is probably not included with that. Basically any of the trading company emissaries. But, that's a lot wider now of what you can do with that. Probably would include the Hunter's Call and stuff like that too. So if you wanted to do stuff to progress that would work. I don't know, I just think this is really cool, and I'm happy that one of the concepts that I had in my video is actually being kind of fulfilled here. So good on Rare for this one. Alrighty, I think this is a decent update. I don't know if I would say it's the best one. We really need to get more in the weeds about what Act 1 is going to be. But this is the one that I read before I started this video. that I am most interested in. Act 3, the Ashen Garrisons. With the Devil's Roar clearly having secrets to guard, Flameheart seeks to reassert control over the area by ordering the construction of 2 new Ashen Garrisons. These fortified barracks, full of hoarded weaponry and treasures, are surrounded by reinforced seawalls and guarded by his skellies, increasing his presence in the area. Scale the walls, defeat the guarding skellies, and unlock the wall's main entrance gate to gain access to the garrison. With the alarm now triggered, you must defeat waves of enemies and obtain a key to get to the interior of the main garrison building itself. Inside, you will continue to delve into the depths, fighting off waves of ashen, obsidian, and bone and blade skellies, with the crescendo being a battle with the skeleton lord. Now, I do feel like they could have done a little bit more to make this a little bit more interesting. However, I'm really excited because this sounds kind of similar to a sea fort. It is very new and it sounds like there's a difference to it, but in terms of the way that this kind of gameplay would work, it sounds kind of similar to Sea Fort, which, as many of you know that's been watching my videos for a long time now, that's been like my favorite addition that they've ever added to the game in terms of PvE stuff to do. So I'm really excited to have something that's like new that we can just do like on demand, that you can just sail up to it and start completing, just like how the Sea Forts or like the Cyan Treasuries and stuff are. And I think that will be really exciting. I do wish they did a little bit something different. Like, I feel like at this point in the game, I'm tired of fighting skeleton lords. It would be nice if there was some kind of different enemy for in here, and we're gonna get into more of like what's coming out for the rest of the season, but I do wish that, you know, the final battle in here was like some kind of new enemy type, not just, you know, the same enemy that we've been fighting for the whole length of the game. With that said though, let's go into detail about what we're actually getting for the season. So that gives you a brief rundown, and I say brief at, 17 minutes or whatever long it is once I get this a little bit more edited. Not that brief, sorry about that, but we'll go ahead and get into details about what is actually coming for this first part. So Ancient Sanctuaries. So I'm going to try to go through a little bit quicker with this stuff. These sanctuaries have been long buried. Yeah, we already know all that. You need the key to get inside. The Eternal Guard. So I think this one's probably going to be the most interesting. While the Smugglers League mysterious client has been making noise, blowing their way into the sanctuaries, this disturbance has had ripples everywhere. Throughout the Sea of Thieves, strange sarcophagi have been unearthed. Contained within are the Banished Ancients known as the Eternal Guard. The guardians of the ancient sanctuaries who hold the keys gain entrance. Although you can stumble across the Eternal Guard sarcophagus throughout each region, they are more abundant on the Devil's Roar Islands. Here's one point I'll make on that, and I talked about it in my concept video. I feel like this part here is a mistake. What I would really love is if we had a more difficult enemy to fight in the game that was specific for the Devil's Roar, and as I talk about in that video, the Devil's Roar I feel like should really remain as the place for the more experienced pirate. It shouldn't just be something that, it's your first day playing the game and you head over there. It should be something that you have to be a little bit more prepared for. It's not going to be, an easy task to do. It's going to be more of a challenge than what you are used to in the other regions of the game. And I think that's how you make the Devil's Roar a lot more interesting and a lot more viable for people to play in. Right now, I don't think a lot of people want to go to the Devil's Roar because there's really not that much interesting about it. So if we have unique enemies and stuff that's a little bit more difficult, but a lot more reward to get over there, I think that's how you can start bringing people back to Devil's Roar. So a sarcophagus is locked, but to unlock it and unleash the Eternal Guard, you can light the surrounding plinths, at which point the Eternal Guard will wake from its slumber and begin an attack on whoever has crossed its path. The guards are large enemies, similar in size to a skeleton lord, however they greatly differ when it comes to their actions. They can cloak themselves to an almost transparent state where they become invulnerable. During this time, they are able to quickly move into an advantageous position where they drop the cloak temporarily and use one of their varied range attacks to inflict high damage on you and your crew. During this time, they will summon dark ancient skeletons who will attack you and distract your focus from those windows where you'll be able to deal damage and work towards defeating them. I think all this sounds interesting and fine to me. I'm probably asking a little bit too much at this point, but I don't really like the whole idea of like summoning dark ancient skeletons. We've had so many enemies that, they just summon skeletons, and, obviously you need some kind of grunt enemy to basically go and fight and have like a bunch of them that are attacking you. And the idea is, kind of overwhelming numbers are attacking you, not just one giant specific enemy. But it would be nice if there was just something different. Even if it was like, like a ghostly looking thing that's like a dark, ghostly, enemy or something that like was coming to attack you. I'm not saying they have to have like fully different abilities. It could just be them hitting you, just like how a lot of the skeletons do. I just think I'm a little bit over, some of the reuse stuff like skeletons attacking us and other stuff like that. But I will say, I do kind of think the whole like it's able to go transparent and stuff is pretty cool. I'm not the biggest fan of it being invulnerable while transparent because I feel like that could get annoying. I feel like if it's transparent, that should be its ability. It can go invisible, but if you are able to shoot it, if you're able to find it and see it, then it should do damage to it. Maybe they'll change that. Obviously, this is still somewhat earlier in development. All these things could change with insider feedback. So, as well as their ability to cloak themselves from sight and damage, they used weapons different to all the other existing enemies throughout the seas, making them feel different to anything you've experienced previously, keeping you guessing and on your toes throughout. Make it through the battle, defeat the guard, stop the waves of summoned Dark Ancient Skellies, and collect your prize, a key to one of the newly excavated ancient sanctuaries in the Devil's Roar. So I think this is probably the biggest W of the update, is that we're actually getting something that's a genuinely new type of enemy in the game. The last time we got a new enemy in the game was all the way back with Season 3 of Sea of Thieves, where we had the Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, in fairness, that update brought 3 new enemy types with the Sirens, the Phantoms, and the Ocean Crawlers. So it added a lot. That probably could have been spread out over the course of a couple of seasons, but in general, it's been a long time since we've seen any new enemies added to the game. So I'm really excited that we just have something new to fight, and it's not just more skeletons, more phantoms, more of the same that we've been dealing with. Alright, so moving on, we have ancient treasures. Within the ancient sanctuaries, you'll find ancient treasure items, and each of these are being of high interest to each one of the trading companies. And the real reason you want to get your hands on a sanctuary key, and the companies are willing to pay good money for them. So just high value treasure. I'm just happy that this is not like the smuggler treasure where, it can't be sold to the trading companies. This can be sold at the sovereign's tent to the trading companies. So that's all really good. I am interested though if you'll get like a one of each for the trading companies, or it's going to be a kind of like a random choice, or it might depend on if you're doing a raid voyage or something. That would be interesting to see. It would be really cool if it was like you got, one for Hunter's Call, one for Merchants, one for Gold Holders, one for Order of Souls, and you just have to have like all of those in the vault, or if you have like a chance to get, multiple of them. But I'm interested to see what they do with this. We have Ancient Tridents with the Ancient Sanctuaries. There is new discovery treasure items. So this is going to just be a reskin of the Ancient Tridents that are faster and more devastating damage capabilities. I guess that's fine. I'm not the biggest fan of, reskin stuff like this, but I think it's okay to add to it. I just feel like it somewhat devalues the benefit of them with the Sunken Kingdom. Technically, you can find tridents anywhere in the game, so, it wasn't even really that exclusive to the Sunken Kingdom. But for me, I personally really like the idea of having, like, stuff that's exclusive to certain regions that make those regions a little bit more interesting. So having tridents in the Sunken Kingdom makes that region a little bit more interesting, makes you want to go visit it so that you can maybe grab some tridents. And maybe the Devil's Roar could have its own thing that's, like, different from everything else. There's a lot that they could do, but just reskinning the stuff and, making it a little bit more, powerful and faster, I'm not exactly sure if that's the winning strategy. However, if they do make these ancient tridents like a little bit more rare than the regular Dark Tides trident, then maybe it's just nice to have like a little bit of like a difference there. So I'm kind of like neutral on this. I think it could be fine, but I would have been interested to see something that's like a new type of weapon added for this region. The Smugglers League have expanded their coverage. There's 2 new hideouts in the Devil's Roar, and you'll be able to visit with the new smugglers there. And then the Smugglers Route 1 voyage that we've had for this season will be going between these two locations in the Devil's Roar. I kind of feel, I get why they're doing it. Obviously, they want to promote that they just added these two new ones. I do kind of feel like it's a mistake to do this just because I really do feel like the Devil's Roar should be viewed as like the more experienced player area. So now if you're gonna be pushing everyone into there to do this voyage that just got introduced, I'm not sure if I exactly like that too much. But again, I think they have a different view on the Devil's Roar. I think they view it as just basically equal to all the other regions. And that's a fine perspective to have. I just think it would be a little bit more interesting to make it the more experienced player area like it originally was intended. So then you have the section just for the Devil's Roar. With the company's focus on new ancient treasures being uncovered in the Devil's Roar, they're paying more gold and reputation for treasure if you sell it to the representative based in the Roar. They really want you focusing on this region to gain access to the sanctuaries, so they decided to pay big to keep close by and focus on helping them. So that's a bit of a cool change where they're making it so that the outpost in the Devil's Roar is actually a little bit more of a valuable place to sell. I didn't, really think about that too much, but that's a nice little change. It makes it so that it kind of similar to Reaper's Hideout, that if you want to, get a little bit more value, you can risk going to that outpost. But now that everyone knows that this outpost is more valuable, you might have more risk of someone like tucking there or something. So I do like that risk versus reward idea with this. I'm sure a lot of people will get mad about that, when that starts happening to them, but I do like that little change. And then I don't know if that's gonna last for the permanently, or if that's just for the season. I could see it just being for the season, but we'll have to wait and see. The Chest of Rage, with all this activity in the Devil's Roar, the Chest of Rage has been appearing in greater numbers throughout the world, with a high concentration in the Roar itself. This is another one where the Chest of Rage could be a great exclusive for the Devil's Roar, but I'm also kind of okay with it being everywhere in the game, and having a higher concentration in the Roar I think is fine. So we have the Molten Sands Fortress Act for Act 2. Note that this event will only be active for that month, and it's an emissary voyage to find a Molten Sanctuary Eternal Guard. I feel like we've talked a good amount in general about this. I feel like I don't really need to go too much in depth, but I guess to quickly sum up, pledge emissary, rank up, and collect the voyage from the company representative. You will receive an ancient scripture detailing a location where you can find one of these alternate Eternal Guards. Travel to that location, perform the summoning ritual, begin the battle as you become accustomed to. As usual, you'll need to defeat the guard to earn its protected treasure, a new Molten Sands ritual key. The key is of extreme high value to all companies, so if you'd like to end your journey here, you can sell the key for a good price, but if you don't want to sell it, you can take it to Molten Sands and use it and go after an even bigger prize. This is very similar to the Gold Holder Ancient Vaults that we had before. So, they're kind of using that same concept where you can do the work and get like halfway through the voyage and get the key, and you can sell that and you don't have to keep going. Or you can basically take that key and try to get even better riches, but you kind of are going to be a little bit more risk because you're obviously spending a lot longer to do it and trying to get more treasure, and you're having to do this stuff. This is a little bit different though because you're actually fighting a PvE enemy, whereas just in the Ancient Voids you're just kind of just doing a puzzle and you're just trying to get the treasure out as quickly as possible. So it's not really like a PvE threat. And since this is going to be a world event at Molten Sands Fortress, you have players that are more likely going to be attacking you than with the Ancient Voids. I think this whole event sounds really good. I don't have too much interest in keep going through reading all this, but you're going to be fighting waves of Obsidian, Ashen, and Dark Ancient Skeletons. Fine. And then you're going to be battling an Ashen Lord at the end. That's fine. Since this is going to be temporary, I'm not really too critical on this since it's only for the month event. If this was permanent content, I would maybe be questioning more of like, why isn't this a unique enemy? Why is it using the Ashen Lord again? Stuff like that. But since it's only going to be around for a month, I really don't care if they're spending too much dev time to like doing new stuff in it. I'd rather the dev work being focused on permanent content in the game. So let's wrap this up with the thing that I'm most interested in, honestly, and the thing I really want to talk about here is Act 3, the Ashen Garrisons. So I haven't seen this part yet. I saw the stuff we talked about before, so this is going to be very new to me that I'm interested to hear. And Captain Flameheart has ordered the construction of 2 new formidable Ashen Garrisons as barracks for his increased presence in the Roar. Tapping into the power of the Devil's Roar itself, these fortresses are skeleton-manned complexes with a surrounding seawall, and a large gate blocking you from entering. You must scale the walls, defeat the skeleton defenses, and lower the gate, allowing you access to the main building. Here you'll need to defeat waves of Ashen and Obsidian skeletons, Ashen Guardians, and Keymasters, along with the Order of Bone and Blade skeletons. Along with them, you'll be an Ashen Garrison Custodian, the holder of the key to the main entrance. Defeat them and take the key, where you can enter and battle it out with waves of enemies within. In a final crescendo to this combat, you will must face a Skeleton Lord, defeat them, and gain access to the treasury, armory, and jail, where are full of new and valuable treasures and weaponry. You will find new Reaper and Athena loot and items exclusively in the garrisons, 2 different Ashen Orders detailing Flameheart's plans for the Sea of Thieves, one kept within each garrison for safekeeping. As a player, when you find one, you can choose to return to Flameheart, keeping a secret, or return them to the Pirate Lord, spilling the beans. Along with these new items, there are tons of Ashen loot, and there's also secret locked compartments which you can use Ashen keys to unlock and acquire extra goods. All this sounds great to me. I do question the same things we talked about earlier. I wish, Skeleton Lord being the final battle, it's kind of whatever. I do like that we have the new Ashen Garrison, so at least we're still using the new enemy in here. More skeletons to fight is fine, but everything else that we're going to be having Reaper and Athena loot exclusively in here is really nice. The Ashen keys that can be used to access, places in there and can be used for extra goodies. It'd be interesting if it can be any Ashen key, if we could do the voyage or whatever and get Ashen keys throughout the Sea of Thieves and then bring them there and use it. That'd be cool. But yeah, I think this is gonna be great. I think there's more that they could do. If you wanted to make it even more of a challenge, you could maybe have reuse the sirens and have sirens that are more frequent circling the garrisons, and Flameheart's really wanting to protect this thing, so he has he has his arrangement with the sirens that are protecting it. He has other stuff maybe that could be interesting. Really, the one thing that I don't like is just the battle with the Skeleton Lord at the end. I wish it was something different, but otherwise, this all sounds really great to me. I think this is probably the best part of the entire season. I wish it was the first month, honestly, because I don't really want to have to wait, from right now, 4 months or so, 4 or 5 months, till we can actually get this content. I think this is the thing I'm actually most looking forward to with Season 18. But it actually is not too far off from what I suggested with the volcanic dungeons for my concept video. Now that video was a little bit different. The idea with that video was more of you go through different rooms, and each room you fight harder and harder waves of enemies, but you get rewards along the way. This is more something similar to what we've had in Sea of Thieves before, where it's you fight all the different waves of enemies, and then at the end you get a bunch of loot. The reason why I had it set up my way, where you have you get a little bit of loot as you progress, is that you could stop whenever you wanted. And I also thought it'd be interesting to see how far could you progress. Maybe they make it so that you can progress very far away and you just get even better and better in treasure, but it depends on how skilled you are at the game. There's a lot they could have done with that concept, but what we have right here, I'm happy with. I really love stuff like the sea forts and the siren treasuries, so having something that fits along with that vein, which this very much tells me that's what it sounds like, is something that's great to me. I think this is a great idea, and I'm really excited for it. Now, for those to answer the questions about what is actually staying and what's permanent content, here's what they have to say. The Eternal Guard and the 3 Ancient Sanctuaries with their Ancient Treasure contents are permanent content. The Molten Sands Emissary Quest and World Event will only be active for month 2, but will return in the future in a rotation of events. So that's fine, I guess. The Ashen Garrisons are permanent content. The accommodations and their rewards are permanent content. Season 18 deeds and their associated rewards are time limited, just like how it is currently with Season 17. The boosted payouts for the Devil's Roar will be limited to Season 18. That's a bit sad, but I get why it's only for that. If they did it forever, that would be, too much. I am interested to see if, the boosted rewards in the Devil's Roar expands to stuff like that you get from other regions. So if I go and do a skeleton for the wilds or whatever, and I take that to the Devil's Roar to sell, will I get the booster rewards for that, or do the treasures that you acquire have to be from the Devil's Roar? That would be something interesting to test out. And the Chest of Rage frequency will only be increased for Season 18, which that's also fine to me. I think all that sounds good. So I think that all sounds really great. I'm interested. I probably won't be going through these comments because I feel like this video is already really long. But if you enjoyed this video, it'd be great if you have to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments below, what are you most excited about with this update? Do you think this is enough content for Season 18, or do you think they need more? But that's all I have for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye, y'all.